What's happening, everybody? On today's show, we'll give you takeaways from all 8 SEC spring games that took place over the weekend. The Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. Like I said, we'll give you some news and notes from around the SEC with all the spring games that happened over the weekend. Also, we'll give you a quick recap as Kentucky introduced their new head coach, Mark Pope, in grandiose fashion. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And hey, this episode is presented to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is helping you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we got to dive right into it. So we got plenty of stuff to get into. We're going to cram 8 spring game recaps into this segment. So without further ado, let's dive right into it as we start over at Alabama. And again, these are just my notes and just a couple things I saw, some headlines other people posted. But I watched literally every spring game except for Kentucky, which wasn't televised, and Ole Miss I had it on, but it was just foolishness. More on that in a second. But Alabama actually played a real spring game. I mean, it was real football being played. First takeaway was I loved the run game. Jam Miller, hard running back. Justice Haynes had an early touchdown on the first drive. Jalen Milroe still has that great speed with his legs when he decides to run. Love seeing that. Jalen Milroe got very frustrated at one point in the spring game. And I thought that stood out to me because it's like, it's a spring game. Why is he getting so angry? And he's a competitor. But I thought the receivers are very interesting as Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, Caleb Odom all made plays, but Jeremy Bernard seems to be emerging as really one of those go-to targets. He and Jalen Milroe showed some chemistry together, but I still like Kendrick Law. I still have high hopes for him. As far as running backs go, like I said, Jam Miller, I kept taking notes on him. Huge runs for him. Great blocking by the offensive line. Tyler Booker at left guard, man, he is an absolute stud. There ain't no amount of NIL worth what he's worth. I mean, he has been outstanding. Jaden Roberts, really good. But I thought James Brockermeyer played very well, too, at the center spot. Jaheim Otis and Jahad Campbell, they both missed scrimmages with injuries. But, offensive line was a concern for Alabama last year, and I think it's a strength. And like I said, the running backs, Justice Haynes, he looked good, and he was probably like the third most impressive back when you consider what Jam Miller did, who took home MVP honors. Richard Young looked really good, showed some power. It's it's an old narrative, but hey, Bama's going to be good at running the football. I love the running back room. Like I said, good touchdown run from Richard Young. Drake Kirkpatrick Jr. with the interception in the end zone off Austin Mack. I thought he had some nice moments. And defensively, Justin Okoronkwo, the kid from Germany, linebacker, he flashed throughout the day, led the day with 11 tackles. So I like him a lot too. But yeah, look, some interesting new pieces with this offense. We saw a different looking offense than we've seen in recent years, particularly way different from last year with Tommy Rees calling plays. But, we saw some pre-snap movement. We saw right out of the gates, Miller and Haynes in a 2-back set. We saw multiple tight end sets. I'm excited to see what this Alabama offense is going to look like. What's interesting, too, is that the Alabama offense dominated the day early, and then the defense woke up. 7 3-and-outs at one point in the second half. They had just one in the first half. So just some notes there from the Alabama spring game. Afterwards, Kalen DeBoer talked about Jalen Milroe and his quick scoring ability. He said it's something that's progressed throughout the spring. It's timing, it's confidence, it's read progressions. He said identifying there's my one-on-one, there's my guy, where to put the ball. But Alabama last year ranked 9th in the SEC in passing plays of 10 or more yards down the field. Kalen DeBoer said that's what the offense That's what got the offense off to a hot start in the scrimmage, is those explosive plays. And I love that we can come out of the locker room and kick off and do that, and we're ready to go. So, again, impressed by Alabama. They were the lone team on national television. Theirs was on big ESPN, so a lot more people got eyeballs on them. But, yeah, very impressed with Alabama. Next up, Georgia Bulldogs. Overwhelming, just my first few notes was Georgia's got weapons everywhere, man. I like Carson Beck. You know, I'd literally written down the note, Carson Beck's going to be a stud, and then he threw a couple of interceptions. But we'll chalk that up to it's the spring game, and Georgia's got pretty good guys on the defense. But offensively, Dillon Bell, Oscar Delp, Lawson Luckie, Trevor Etienne, Rara Thomas, Dominic Lovett, Roderick Robinson. I mean, there's just dudes everywhere. And then in comes a transfer in Colby Young from Miami, pulls in a big touchdown from Carson Beck at the end zone, and 6'3" Colby Young, just going to be a huge red zone target for them. Again, transferring in from Miami this offseason. Defensively, Mykel Williams, he tipped the pass that he then intercepted, and then a little while later, a bad throw by Carson Beck goes right at C.J. Allen, and look, C.J. Allen made plays all last year at Georgia, so he looks to be in prime form. Gunnar Stockton, I think, is coming along as the backup. Connected 54 yards with Anthony Evans at one point. Later in the game, true freshman wide receiver Sokovi White with a nice touchdown catch late in the game. Freshman linebacker Chris Cole nearly picked off Gunnar Stockton as well. So very active there. But I like some of the contested catches. We got to see, like we said, Dillon Bell make some nice catches. Trevor Etienne came in. Roderick Robinson started, but then we saw Etienne very quickly, and he showed off his speed, man. Around 24 yards rushing, 25 yards receiving, something like that. So Trevor Etienne, I mean, he's going to be the big part of this offense. Some notes here I took when the game was kicking off. We saw freshman quarterback Ryan Puglisi was ruled out with a lower body injury. So at one point in the second half, Gunnar Stockton was just playing both sides. He was quarterback for this team, quarterback for that team. Bama transfer safety Jake Pope was dressed out. He had a club on his left hand, and running back Branson Robinson was dressed out, went through pregame warmups as he recovers from that patellar tendon injury. One other guy who jumped out to me from Georgia, defensive tackle transfer Xavier McLeod, transferred to Georgia after one season with the Gamecocks. He enters Georgia's program, and it's noticeable. He is going to be one of Georgia's big disruptors up front on that defensive line. So, again, just kind of some of my takeaways. But, like, again, I've said it all offseason. Georgia ain't going anywhere, man. They're loaded with talent. Kirby didn't forget how to coach overnight. They're going to be just fine. And Georgia's got some dogs in them again. But like the O-line, I like the D-line as well. That would spin a big question mark on, you know, is this D-line going to be as good as the ones recently? Maybe not, but maybe so. This guys get more experience. Next up, the Florida Gators. I thought Graham Mertz looked pretty solid. Hit a 60-yard touchdown pass to Trey Wilson before halftime. He was really good. Trey Wilson looks ready to fill those shoes of Ricky Parasol as wide receiver number one. I like Treyon Webb a lot. Got to see him as a runner and a pass catcher out there. Did have a game-winning field goal for the blue team in the final seconds. Trey Smack connected. Probably shouldn't have had enough time on the clock, but it was what it was. Defense could be interesting. I think this can be an improved defensive unit for the Gators. Pup Howard, the South Carolina linebacker transfer, looks really good. But to me, the story of the day, I mean, like, look, Graham Mertz is going to be the starter, but they got to find ways to get DJ Lagway on the field. He connected with wide receiver Aiden Mizell in the end zone for a 22-yard touchdown. Made a really nice, impressive throw from the pocket to Spirito for a big gain. He's just so exciting to watch, man. I know both quarterbacks did throw picks in this one, but DJ Lagway, they're going to have to find some packages, something to get him on the field. Again, Graham Mertz, one of the most efficient passers in the SEC a year ago, but DJ Lagway's special, man. He just looks the part, and I just his frame and size and everything for being a true freshman, early enrollee. I want to see him on the field, and we'll see what happens in Florida, the win losses and all that. I know Billy Napier on the hot seat, all that kind of stuff, but Love DJ Lagway, and here's hoping we get to see more of him throughout this year at Florida. Over at LSU, we got to see a new age as they lose the Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels, but in comes Garrett Nussmeier, and he looked fantastic. Starts with a long touchdown pass to transfer Zavion Thomas from Mississippi State, 45-yard touchdown pass. Even before that, they were doing like some red zone drills, and Josh Williams, the running back, had a rushing touchdown, just gutted the LSU defensive front. But Nussmeier ends up going a perfect day, 7 for 7 for 172 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. It was an ideal performance for Garrett Nussmeier, who, again, projected to be the starter. I don't think there's any question on that at this point. He hit Kyren Lacy for a big gain at one point. You know, they're losing Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., and yet here's some other guys just stepping up. Like we said, Zavion Thomas coming in from Mississippi State, Kyren Lacy, who was basically their number 3 last year. They still got Mason Taylor and all these other weapons. And how about running back Caleb Jackson? He had a big 35-yard touchdown run, just big and physical and fast. Took another 60-yard touchdown strike from Nussmeier to Kyren Lacy. And then C.J. Daniels, the transfer wide receiver from Liberty, I thought looked really good. The offense scored on all 3 possessions with Nussmeier in there, and they built a 24-8 lead. Now, going to be interesting to watch the LSU backup quarterback competition. They brought in A.J. Swan, the former starter from Vanderbilt. He's competing with Ricky Collins, who's been there a little while. So that one will be interesting to keep an eye on. But couldn't help but notice there were some busted coverages on some deep throws that Nussmeier made. Brian Kelly said afterward there were instances of the defensive backfield not being on the same page. Said some players were running cover 3 when they were supposed to be running cover 2. I did like freshman cornerback P.J. Woodland. He had an early pass breakup. I know he's a guy that they've been very high on, but big concerns for the LSU's defense. Sage Ryan got beat in the secondary as he did many times last year. And Blake Baker, their defense coordinator, was reportedly just using basic calls, but the unit has a lot of work to do, and they got to get some things figured out on that defensive line. I liked safety Kylen Jackson. He had a sack with Weeks. The linebacker was flying around everywhere, so they got some guys there. But that defensive line, they had early enrollee defensive end Gabriel Relaford. He had 2 sacks, 3.5 tackles for a loss, but ESPN the other day had a story that said defensive line is a weakness that needs to be addressed by LSU in the transfer portal that is about to open. So we'll see if they do that. But no doubt, the offense looks really good. I mean, they're going to score some points. I know LSU fans are just hoping it's not going to be a repeat of what it was last year. Stud offense, but man, can you get a stop defensively? Because look, that's the difference between celebrating a Jaden Daniels Heisman season and celebrating a national championship or playoff contending season. And that's what LSU is hoping for, not just putting up big numbers on offense. All right, there you go. It's a few games recap there for you. Thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll head to Knoxville and talk about what we saw in Tennessee. That is coming your way here in just a second on Locked On SEC. First, I want to remind you guys, this episode presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and that's why LinkedIn Jobs is helping you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. It's not just a job board. LinkedIn is helping you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional over at LinkedIn. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's LinkedIn Jobs. All right, roll along here. Locked Locked On SEC. And hey, I want to remind you guys, it is Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Live coming up on April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th, 7 p.m. Eastern, streaming live. Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. And look, there's going to be a lot of SEC guys going in the first round, as they typically do. All right, let's dive back into it as we are reacting to some of the spring games from over the weekend. Again, I watched them all, took some notes, and just give you my simple takeaways. So as we dive back into it, starting over in Knoxville, Tennessee, as Josh Heupel, I'd heard going into this that they had held a lot of guys out, just didn't want to risk injuries, and some guys banged up already and all this kind of stuff. The Vols' top 4 interior O-linemen, Spraggins, Mays, Lampley, Carrick, all were out. So we had some early jumps early. We had some, false starts. We had some offsides. We had just a bunch of sloppiness. But we did see Nico Iamaleava connect with some of his weapons down the field. We saw Chaz Nimrod, beautiful 27-yard touchdown catch from Nico. That was good to see. We did hear Squirrel White was out with a family, I don't know if they said issue or commitment or whatever it was, but Squirrel White did not play. We did say Chris Brazzell, our friend that we had on the show just a couple weeks ago, and it was good to see him, the Tulane transfer, have a 71-yard touchdown catch in the third quarter. He did say afterward he's still adjusting to this offense, said it is so fast. But, again, he expects to be a big weapon, along with Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton and all those guys. We also got our first look at Holden Stays, the new tight end transferring in this offseason, so from Notre Dame. So good to see him in action. And, of course, like we said, seeing Nico out there, near perfect performance from him. He was 7 of 9 for 96 yards and a touchdown, didn't turn the football over. And we got a good look at Tennessee's backup quarterbacks, Gaston Moore and Jake Merklinger. Both looked really good. And, Gaston Moore hit a 63-yard touchdown pass to the early enrollee wide receiver Mike Matthews. Again, no shortage of weapons for Tennessee when it comes to the offensive side. But I thought defensive side, how about freshman safety Boo Carter? Several tackles, was already running with the first team early. That was cool to see. Linebacker Jeremiah Thielander had 2 sacks. He said that linebacker coach William Inge has really helped him make a difference. And how about true freshman inside linebacker Edwin Spillman with a good performance? Had 6 tackles, a tackle for a loss, and a sack. 5 of his tackles were solo, too. So always good to see guys making plays out in space. But after the game, Josh Heupel saying the difference in Nico Iamaleava from last spring to this spring is night and day. And look, obviously so. He's the starter now, or presumed starter. So you would hope he's come light years ahead of where he was a year ago. But yeah, again, can't make any too super overwhelming takeaways from the game because of so many guys that were out. But again, it was Vol football, and they scored some points, moved the football, and that looked good. So again, a lot of excitement for the Vols, and see if they can get to 10 wins this year. A lot of people think they can. It'll be fun to see how that plays out. All right, next spring game. How about over at Arkansas? Maybe a team kind of flied under the radar. And another guy we had on the show a few weeks ago, quarterback Taylen Green, throwing a couple touchdown passes. He is clearly QB number 1, but he is loving this Bobby Petrino offense. Featured plenty of crossing routes, go routes, plenty of read options. And Taylen Green looked good, man. Somebody wrote, they said Bobby Petrino is dangerous enough on his own, but now he's got a quarterback that seems to fit his offense to a T. The Hogs are going to score some points. Now, are they going to win games? I don't know. But offense looked really good. How about Jaquindon Jackson? the transfer at running back, looked really good as well. A couple of touchdown runs for him. I look, the Arkansas offensive line looked improved to me. I don't know how improved they are, but they looked pretty solid overall. Last year was just a mess. But had another note. Green threw another touchdown. This one to Jaxson. Made some nice, nifty moves to make a man miss. Tyron Broden, the wide receiver, is a guy that's emerged as a big-time pass catcher. Sam Pittman spoke highly of him. And after the game, Taylen Green saying he really liked having Bobby Petrino's voice in his ear, in the helmet. And that was something we heard from a couple of coaches after the spring games, that them being able to, the offensive coaches being able to be in the ear of their quarterback is going to be a difference maker this year. But Taylen Green ends up going 17 of 22 for 243 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2 of his best throws were touchdown passes to Tyron Broden and Andrew Armstrong. And again, impressed with them, impressed with Jaquindon Jackson at running back. And I said it on social media to our buddy John Neighbors, host of Locked On Razorbacks, but I mean, as excited as we were last year with having KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders back, I think if you're an Arkansas fan, you almost need to be more excited with these two guys, with Jalen Jackson and Jaquindon Jackson. Just two guys, Taylen Green and Jaquindon Jackson, 2 guys coming as transfers, but super excited to see what they can do. One more note. I know it's only a spring scrimmage, but Arkansas has got to find a kicker. Matthew Shipley didn't do great out there, so they gotta figure out the kicker thing. All right, over at Kentucky, they did not televise their spring game. So I was only able to go on clips that I saw on social media and a few news websites on top of notes from people who were there covering it. But they did a full field 11-on-11, but no tackling to the ground. A few notes I saw: the freshman running back Jason Patterson, he had a 6-yard touchdown run early. He is looking good and, looking really good at that running back spot. There's a big hole to fill there with Ray Davis gone, but Jason Patterson, number 26, a name to keep an eye on. Freshman wide receiver Hardly Gilmore had a couple nice plays early on. Quarterback Brock Vandagriff looked solid. He found tight end Khamari Anderson in the end zone for a touchdown, threw another one to Anthony Brown-Stevens. Mark Stoops said he likes the pace that Bush Hamden wants to play at. He said most plays were snapped within 20 seconds or more. He did bring up they were down 9 linemen, so he said couldn't get a great read there. But he did say the wide receiver group is as deep as it's been since he's been in Lexington. He said they didn't really plan to make any big passes downfield. He said we just pitched and catched and made a little routine today. And I thought we were relatively clean. Like I said, Vandagriff connecting on passing scores to Khamari Anderson and Dane Key. Hardly Gilmore had a nice comeback route, shaking off his defender, catching a pass from Bo Allen for a 20-yard gain. And Brock Vandagriff showed off his legs. He can use them to scramble. He can use them to take off for a run. Defensively, linebacker De'Eric Jackson left the field hobbled. That was a little concerning. But Jeremiah Anglin played well in the secondary. He had a pick 6 to end the spring game. So that was good to see. But again, a lot of the talk at Kentucky, the tempo offense, that has been the talk of the offseason. And so it's going to be really fun to see what Brock Vandagriff can do, the former Georgia transfer. And look, when you got weapons like Barry and Brown and Dane Key back, they're going to score some points. Just got to figure out who's going to be the primary ball carrier in the backfield. But Kentucky's got weapons. And then lastly, over at Ole Miss, look, even before Saturday arrived, Lane Kiffin was calling the event. It was going to be the Grove Bowl games. And it's so funny it was going on at the same time as Alabama's spring game, because Alabama was running a real football spring game scrimmage, whereas Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss were playing games. Wasn't a whole lot of real football being played. They started with a dunk contest. Brandon Turnage won that one. And then they had a tug-of-war contest between some of the staff and then some of the players. And then they had some hot dog eating where Joey Chestnutt joined in. He downed 20 hot dogs. And then we had the 7-on-7 flag football game going on. It was the red team against the blue team. Red team won 71-70. Caden Davis ended the event missing a 65-yard field goal. But Ole Miss did not provide statistics for the football action, but just to give you some of the notes of who stood out. Poop Hall, Lewis Moore, Trey Amos came down with interceptions defensively. But in the third quarter, sophomore wideout Aiden Williams stuck out a hand, grabbed a back shoulder pass from early enrollee quarterback A.J. Maddox for a big game, and that got people going. But Lane Kiffin saying after, he said, really the value of spring games, in my opinion, is overrated because you don't show many plays on offense or defense. Most people don't, unless they're trying to win the fans over or you're on TV. He said, we really don't get a whole lot out of it. So he decided to go with kind of a goofy and chaotic spring game, but the fans had a good time. It was like almost like a big frat party, really. We did get a look at Walter Nolan, the big 6'4", almost 300-pound D tackle coming over from Texas A&M. He took part in the tug of war competition. And one more note, we did see Jaxson Dart for a bit. He's been limited by a lower leg injury this season, but appears to be going in the right direction. Lane Kiffin did confirm Dart had lower leg surgery earlier this offseason, but during the modified spring game, Dart was still able to participate in some of the action. And after the game said, I feel pretty close to 100%. He said, I think it's going to be a good period to have this May off to get the extra work that I need and kind of get back to the fundamentals of my game, which I'm really excited for, to be back and doing that. So again, procedure there for Jaxson Dart, but seems to be doing well and ready to go. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We'll talk about the Kentucky basketball hire and some of the big hoopla they had going on over there in Lexington over the weekend. That's coming your way next. First, I want to remind you this episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look at his playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game out there. And of course, right now, new customers, if you've never signed up with FanDuel before, go sign up today. You can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Here's where you got to go. You got to go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. You got to make sure you put in that /lockedon. That's what's going to get you that special for new customers, getting that $150 in bonus bets. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go make your first bet an automatic win. It is FanDuel. They are America's #1 sports book. Get started today. Sign up FanDuel.com/lockedon. Then you can download the app and be like me. Check it every morning and see what are the latest bets and odds you can get in on the action. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, continue on here, Locked On SEC. And look, we spent a lot of shows the last 2 weeks talking about John Calipari and was he going to stay at Kentucky? He was going to, they were going to make a move, then they weren't. They were going to keep him, and then he decides to leave, and he's going to Arkansas. And so the hunt was on for Kentucky to make their next hire, and news leaked out Thursday night that it was going to be Mark Pope, the BYU head coach, who, of course, was a player at Kentucky, part of the 1996 national championship team. But he was introduced at Rupp Arena on Sunday afternoon. And look, this thing was real. Rupp Arena seats a little over 20,000, and there did not appear to be an empty seat in the arena for a press conference. Mark Pope standing at a podium in front of a sold-out crowd at Rupp Arena, signed a 5-year deal, $5.5 million per year. But he was blunt, man, about the realistic expectations. Said, I understand the assignment. We are here to win banners. He said, we're here to win banners in Nashville at the SEC tournament, something that John Calipari kind of dismissed. He said, you guys turn out in Nashville like nobody else, and that matters. And then, of course, our job here and our assignment is to win banners in the Final Four, national championships. That's our job. So, look, Kentucky fans super excited to see Mark Pope there. He's a guy that this is his dream job, as we talked about last week with our guy from Locked On Cougars. And Pope said, look, everybody knows my heart bleeds blue Kentucky. And Mitch Barnhart knew that. He said maybe he was a little cautious calling me because he knew I was going to say yes before he even finished asking the question. But his arrival marks the latest step in a sequence of events that, look, they got to get back to where they were in 2012 when John Calipari won them that national championship. They have not won one since. But before he spoke, Pope held up the 1996 National Championship trophy as he walked onto the court from a bus that featured former players throughout the decades. And then he held up his jersey from that championship game and said that is where Kentucky needs to get back. He said, we're not ducking it. That is the assignment. So congrats to Mark Pope. Best of luck to those at Kentucky. And, man, if we're making the schedule for next year, I know Texas and Oklahoma are coming in, but we got to get a home and away with Kentucky and Arkansas, right? I mean, that is must-see TV. John Calipari versus Mark Pope, both in Fayetteville and in Lexington. We got to get both those. So let's make it happen. All right, there you have it. You are all caught up on everything going on around the SEC. So we'll recap the 8 spring games we had over the weekend, even though Ole Miss wasn't really a spring game and we couldn't watch Kentucky because it wasn't televised. But all the rest we got to see, and we saw Auburn 2 weeks ago, so we did them. We saw Mizzou a month ago. Theirs was like two-hand touch, but we got all those out the way. So next week we are going to get this coming weekend. We're going to have Mississippi State. We're going to have Texas. We're going to have Texas A&M. We're going to have Oklahoma. We're going to have South Carolina. So we'll recap all those coming next week's show. And Vanderbilt, they're having scrimmages, but reportedly they're not having a spring game. So Clark Lee, maybe send us some film. Maybe we can break it down and give you some takeaways of what we see from Vandy's scrimmages. But that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Come on back and check us out tomorrow on the show. We'll have some more football takeaways and news and recruiting tidbits and a whole lot more going on throughout the week. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Go make your second listen. Check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming for you 24/7 on YouTube and those Amazon Fire channels. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.